Hello everybody, Sebastian Ortiz, industrial athlete and free market philosopher. Today I have a bunch of ideas that I want to discuss with you, but the first one is this idea of professionalism. He's very professional. He's very serious. And this is related to that essay that I have mentioned about the misuse of poetic language in scientific discourse. And a lot of times people don't realize the philosophical reality that when they are talking about things in the world, they are talking scientifically. They're talking about known things. And so I should say that professionalism is actually moral corruption. Professionalism is getting what is called a government license to operate in a given industry. What was called a liberal profession was that you were allowed to practice it freely. And this presumes that government monopoly quality controls are somehow what makes the world run. That's not the true history of how Western civilization led to its expansion all the way into the Americas. And this is to say that actually, if you look at all of the corrupt doctors that promoted the use of experimental, unethical medical treatments en masse on the population, causing a lot of damage, irreversible physical damage, they were doing this because they were complying with the reports that were being given by the official, that is government, an institutional, that is government-funded universities, medical authorities. So I know at least one friend that ceased to practice medicine around that time, during the tyranny of the Covidistas. And you see, things being voluntary, things being agreed upon and without a threat of I will send armed thugs to your house and freeze your bank accounts, take what is not mine, take what is yours, make it mine, and kidnap you. When that is not the method of operations, things find a solution on their own. I'll give you an example. So for the 4 years that the tyranny of the Covidistas lasted, I avoided the private market. I more or less went back home and did not engage in consumption. I did not buy stuff around because I was avoiding wearing a face mask. And the reason is very simple. You do not want to encourage the evil culture of the political institutions. And so the funny thing is, now I am an industrial athlete. I work in a production place. That's what I call it. A production place is a place where an economic good or service is produced. And this incorporates Ludwig von Mises' idea of the subjective theory of value, that which is an economic good is that which a person thinks is good to achieve their goals at the time of the transaction. And people know how I have said that mental illness, not only is it false, if it's real illness that can be detected in the body, then it would be neurological disease. There's no such thing as the disease of the mind, which is an abstraction, an intangible concept, as has been pointed out by Thomas Saz. But the funny thing is that to classify someone's unique personality and self-expression, manifestation of themselves in their actions, in their choices, as a disease is akin to saying that a black person has a medical condition of the skin that has a genetic component. You see? Well, the funny thing is, for what was it? 2 years, I avoided the market. There is so much in the market that I don't want, said Socrates. To avoid wearing a face mask, not to encourage and promote and participate in an evil culture of compliance and enforcement. And yet now that I am an industrial athlete, I voluntarily put on a face mask because I have a condition called facial hair. When there's facial hair, I have to put on a mask. But that cost, what it costs me to do that, is justified in the greater value that I get from having a job. And I do it voluntarily. And there is no coercion, there's no aggressive threat that I will be kidnapped by men with guns and handcuffs if I don't put on the mask. So the voluntary context of things is very, very important. And so when there is a barrier to enter the market in any given industry, a permission, whether it's a residency permit or a license to be a doctor or a lawyer, then what you are seeing is the aggressive, violent exclusion of the population from engaging in economic activity. And the people who go through that process, who intentionally, being aware, having been informed, pursue that path, are being bribed. They are being told, but you can get a lot of money because you get a monopoly license from the government, and most people cannot compete with you. And there's also a secondary effect in the educational institution, which is there are always more students than there are professors. Professors with the professional experience in the relevant industry required. So then it acquires a pyramidal Ponzi scheme like shape, the economy of training, of learning a trade, of being an apprentice. And so, you see, I don't call it a factory because the people I work with are competent, which is the meaning of competitive. Competere means with, and petere means to stride, from the Latin foot. And that means to be able to keep up with the pace of someone. It is not this national religion of England, of Darwinism, and the modern idea of competition as a win-lose situation, like the games of the English, football, tennis, and all of that, where only one person wins and necessarily the other person loses by default. No, that is not what the original term competition was. And so I work with people who are extremely competent, who are heroes. We multiply bread for the people, for the consumer. And everybody knows from reading The Wealth of Nations of Adam Smith, that the way a society becomes richer is by producing a lot of goods and services. Everybody engaging in the production of a good or service means that there is more abundance of goods and services, and that the relative price of those goods and services goes down because of the law of marginal utility. That means that you value things are valuable to you to some extent relative to how abundant they are. Because after you had the first bottle of Coca-Cola, the second is less satisfying, and the third less, and the fifth less. And so once the desires of the consumers are satisfied, then there is a pressure for distributors, for sales people to lower the price so that the things don't spoil, especially consumer goods. And you know that old phrase that thanks to the workings of the free market, of the voluntary section of society, the non-governmental section of society, people who are, everyday citizens, ordinary people, can get to enjoy things that kings of old wouldn't have dreamed of. I went to a second store shop and I got this jacket for less than 10 euros. It's made out of wool. This is high quality stuff at a charity shop. And that's what happens when there is so much production that the consumption of people can be satisfied. Then even one man's trash can be another man's treasure. And so you need to understand what Samuel Edward Konkin emphasized so much, that the market is that part of society that behaves peacefully. And the state is that part of society that behaves aggressively, that gets things by stealing, that gets cooperation by imposing. And then you will realize the true competitive heroes that all of these people who usually get called factory workers, they're not factory workers, they're producers. And don't get me wrong, I like competition. I am a great admirer of Michael Jordan, even within that context of grown men playing children's games and being paid millions of dollars, to a large extent because of subsidies. That is money that has been taken from Peter to give to Paul. And so it is excessively given too much attention, these grown men playing children's games. Yeah, grown men playing children's games. But the fact of the matter is that I like the attitude of Michael Jordan, of I am an unstoppable force and I will not lose. I will prevail. Over time I will prevail. It reminds me of that old Christian motto, God with me, who can be against me? But the fact of the matter is that the true heroes that bring bread to our tables are those people engaged in production. Think about the government and inflation. How the government steals, and when it doesn't have enough money to pay for all of the people who are retired and all the people who are bureaucrats and all the people who are foreign refugees, what they do is they print money. The central bank simply adds it to the national debt, to the tax increases that your children and grandchildren will suffer. But by doing that, by printing new money, of course they devaluate the money and everything becomes more expensive. And so there is this tension where the heroes in production, by producing more and more, are preventing through deflation that inflation gets out of control. When inflation gets out of control and the money is worth nothing, like it happened in Argentina, like it happened in Venezuela, like it happened in Germany, the Germany that created the crisis of the Deutsche Mark, that then was ready to take anything as a political savior, and then democratically elected Hitler. When that happens, society is in big trouble. And so what I want to stress here is, although most industries are heavily regulated and they have to follow rules that have been imposed by the European Union and governments and so on, the fact of the matter is that the good intention, the intention to be a productive person, think of it like, what is the difference between manslaughter, killing in negligence by being careless, and murder, the intention? Well, it's not the intention that counts, it's the intentional effect. And the people who work in the production of real services, are really serving the public, they are heroes. They make everybody's life better. And not only that, it is the intentional effect that counts. And why do I say this? Because those people who seek high positions, who want to be a doctor or a lawyer, I studied law for 3 years, but I never got my diploma. I quit doing that. Just because they know that they will get an easy job, because it's a monopoly. Not everybody can be a lawyer and a doctor by learning it as an apprentice, as it was the case like in the late 19th century. They are saying, I will comply and enforce the rules of the government on the people who will take my authority on faith. Well, the doctor told me that it was safe to do so, so why should I listen to you and not the doctor? Said some people who are now dead. Thank you for watching.